So first, a little bit of housekeeping. I am going to be really pressed to get through all the points I want to make. So I'm going to save Q&A for the end. And then we'll do some talking, some open talking after the presentation. Also, most of the notes that anyone would be interested in taking, I have already provided for you in the handouts. So you can feel free to make a cup of tea and sit back and just kind of follow along and not worry about trying to write everything down. And then, of course, you also have the videos coming, so you can reference those. So sit back and relax. And then the next thing I would like to review is that things really change on a dime in this industry. I mean, really fast. Today's symposiums could be outdated by, or topics can be outdated by next month, because each of the companies is working and researching constantly to update and improve. And so when I did the research for this, I tried to go to the horse's mouth, so to speak, and if I was quoting something about Ancestry, I got the information directly from Ancestry, and same with 23andMe and vice versa, just to make sure that I'm getting the most recent truth. Okay, and so then just a quick overview of what I'm going to be talking about. When Kelly first asked me to talk about 23andMe, I thought, wow, that's a really big topic. I mean, that's like, there's so many ways you can go with that. So I did a little bit of research first to see what's already out there so I don't reinvent the wheel. And I found that for each of the different little tools available, there are plenty of little demonstration videos to show you how to use that specific tool. There is also a ridiculous number of videos showing you how to spit in a tube. So I didn't want to recreate that either for you. So I decided to take it a little different. What I thought was maybe lacking a little bit was a more recent and easy to understand comparison of the big guys. 23andMe and Ancestry being the primaries. So I'm going to kind of do a side-by-side comparison of those and try and help people understand why they might be interested in a 23andMe kit, who should be taking them, and how they might help you. Okay, so having said that, let's go ahead and let me share screen. And we're going to go ahead and share this screen. All right. Is everybody seeing that? And then
I see your PowerPoint now.
All right, beautiful. Okay, so one question I get asked a lot, and I think a lot of us get asked a lot when we start talking about DNA, is which company's the best? Who should I use? And that used to be a super easy question to answer. What are you going to use it for? If you're interested in building health reports and helping empower your doctor, or if you're doing family planning and you're wanting all those health reports and you're wanting to know what might be lurking inside you, 23andMe was the way to go, because they had all the health reports and Ancestry really had none. If you are wanting to grow your family tree and learn your family history, then you really wanted to use Ancestry, because they had ginormous databases of documents for you to research. So everything was simple and everything was easy. And then it all changed. And now we see that both companies have DNA matches. Both companies have health reports, although we'll find that 23andMe is probably a little bit heavier on their health reports. Both companies now have trees, but of course Ancestry is going to steal the show when it comes to trees. Ethnicity estimates, the ability to message DNA matches, fun and interesting tools, they both got it. And so how do we decide then? So what is going to be our deciding factor? Well, there's a couple of different thoughts out there, a couple of different theories you can go with. So number one theory is bigger is better. So the bigger the database, the more matches I'm going to have, and more matches equals success, right? Makes sense. Number two, you need trees to use DNA and to find your matches and to do anything really useful with them. You have to have a tree. So you're going to want to go with the company with the great big trees. The third thought is I want cool toys. We might be science-minded, but we still like fun stuff. And so we like those cool, fun features. We like the automated stuff. We like the fanfare. So we're going to keep some of those things in mind as we go through the comparison and see how those kind of stack up and come to play. We'll review that later. All right, so in March 2019, Ancestry DNA Frequently Asked Questions page posted this post saying, additionally, now that Ancestry DNA Network has over 15 million members, each Ancestry DNA customer receives an average of 50,000 total matches. And that number grows by 2% to 5% each month as more people join the network. That is huge. 50,000 matches, especially for those people who remember a time when you logged in and like had a party because you had 5 matches. So 50,000 matches, you're like, whoa, we've got the whole world mapped out now. But we have to remember, it says right here, that is an average. So an increase in the number of matches does not always mean an increase in the number of matches for you specifically. So I thought the best way to kind of lay this out would be with an example to follow along. And as luck would have it, I'm a perfect example. So we're going to take a look at some of my tree numbers and kind of see how this plays out in real life. All right, so our average, back in March of 2019, the average was 50,000. If we apply their formula at the high end, we'd be at about 109,000 matches by today. So that being the range, let's take a look at mine. I, on Ancestry.com, have a total of 24,843 matches. I have 2 sons. One son has a total of 17,414 matches, and the other son has a total of 48,869 matches. So you look at it and you're like, what's up with that? Where's my 50,000? So we go back and we take a look at the post again, and we notice this part right here where it says, as more people join the network. So it occurs to me that one thing that might actually be relevant is where are the companies selling their kits? And so we take a look at this breakdown and we see here, this section up here at the top, and you have this is one of your printouts. And so if it's too tiny for you to see on your screen, it might be easier to see on the printout. But up in this section here, we see both Ancestry and 23andMe sell their kits to all of these countries. Then we come down and we see Ancestry also sells to these countries that 23andMe does not. 23andMe sells to these countries that Ancestry does not. So you start to look at it and say, well, if MyHeritage comes from places like Italy or France or Monaco or Luxembourg, the number of matches that you have opposed to the number of matches your neighbor has might be significantly different. So let's take a look at my tree represented in flags. So this is mom's side of the tree. Both of mom's parents were born in the United States. On her dad's side, the paternal line comes from Norway and apparently traces back hundreds of years in that area. His maternal line has deep American kind of pioneer roots, and prior to coming into America, the various lines came from England, Ireland, and Scotland. And then we go to mom's maternal side, and we see that both of her mother's parents came from Belgium. And we actually had a cousin in Belgium who recently had a huge reunion because he had finished tracing 300 years of our Belgium lines. And so he invited all of the Lathauers from around the world to come and be part of this reunion. It was kind of cool. So anyway, we've got that kind of mapped out. So let's go back to our chart and see how that shakes out for me. Most of those areas are sold. Both companies are selling kits in those. The one exception being Belgium. Belgium is not sold. It's sold by 23andMe, but it's not sold by Ancestry. So my Belgium line isn't going to have as many matches. It doesn't mean it's not going to have any, because people living in other countries with that Belgium heritage are still going to be able to match up, but it's going to eliminate any of my cousins who are currently living in Belgium from being able to match up with me. So that could come into play. The other thing we notice here, if we take a peek off to the side here at where MyHeritage comes into play, MyHeritage DNA is currently offered in all countries worldwide except Israel, Iran, Libya, Sudan, Somalia, North Korea, Lebanon, Russia, and Syria. And a note on that, and they actually were selling in Russia until just recently, but sales to Russia have been suspended, and they actually expect that to affect any company that is selling to Russia outside of Russia. New restrictions in place that have stopped sales there. However, all of the people that had kits already and who had accounts and DNA matches, they're still in there and they're still allowed access. So you haven't lost the matches you already had, but you're not going to gain any new ones for a while from Russia. Okay, so what about dad's side? We take a look at my father's side and it gets a lot less clear. My dad's parents were both born in Yugoslavia, a country that doesn't even exist anymore. That adds a whole fun challenge. Their country was also kind of wiped out by war, so the whole record situation is super sketchy. And then you have that whole family lore thing that affects all of us. Really, really intense here, because there's a lot of emotions and a lot of storylines carried down that might have been impacted by politics and fear and things like that. So it's hard to know where to take our truth and what we're looking at. So I really turned to DNA to help me with this puzzle quite a bit. So some of the things flying around that we believe to be out there are German, some Slavian, we know the Yugoslavian, possibly some Serbian, Roma Gypsy. Some relatives are yelling Volksdeutsch, and so trying to sort through all of that can be difficult. So we go back to our tree now, or we go back to where our kits are sold. And when we look in here, we see several countries that could be impacted, because we don't know exactly what countries we're talking about where we're looking for my paternal line. But we do see some that could potentially be impacted. Italy, Macedonia, Moldova, Monaco, Portugal, Spain. These are all areas that my ancestors could have come from, that the ancestry kits are not sold at, and that could be impacting the number of DNA matches I'm seeing. So let's go back and look again at those numbers, and this time let's throw in a new number. Out here you see client X. This is one of my private clients who gave me permission to share her number in my comparison, and you can see that this particular client has 145,287 matches. This particular client, we have traced almost all of her lines back at least 5 or 6 generations. And she's got some really, really deep American roots, and it looks like they go even deeper than we've looked. Hold on one moment. So you can see the impact of those American kind of British roots are going to make those numbers jump a lot higher, whereas if you're looking out in countries that are more Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, Russia, those areas, your numbers might be impacted. At this point, I can also let you know that son number 1, his father has deep Russian and Polish roots, whereas son number 2, his father dates back to pretty close to the Mayflower. So again, you can see kind of the difference that the location of your history might come into play in affecting the number of matches you get. Now, here's an interesting side note. If you take all of these numbers right here, me, my 2 sons, and my client X, and you average them together, you will find that they average right at about 59,000. So Ancestry DNA's estimator is like right on for us. Okay, so we talked about how the sales affect matches, but what about how they affect our ethnicity data? Because matches come from kit sales and subscriptions, ethnicity data also comes somewhat from kit sales, but it also comes from other sources. So just because Ancestry.com isn't selling in Italy doesn't mean Italy isn't going to show up on your ethnicity markers, because all of those cousins of all of your Italian cousins living in America or Canada or Europe, where the kits are sold, all of those are going to come into play in the data. So let's have a look and see a breakdown of what regions each kit is supporting. This is Ancestry.com, and all of these little colored regions are where I pop up, but you can see all the grayed out regions here. Those are all the areas that could have potentially shown up on my kit. Out here, you see these blacked out areas. These are going to be the areas where Ancestry isn't even going to really be reporting on the kit. So let's compare that. This is 23andMe. And as you can see, it is pretty solidly covered. I could not find any gaps or holes. So it looks like their reports are pretty much going to cover all the regions available out there. An important note on that too, though, is each company determines what its own region is. So where one company might just report all of this as Europe general, the other might break it down into smaller bits. So, you know, I could say if I just reported only in Iowa, I could color all of the United States potentially, you know what I'm saying? So when you're looking, if it's important to your research, when you go in and you take a look, stop and go to the frequently asked questions, or pick up the phone or get on the computer and ask directly, what are your sales in this area? How big are your sales in this area? And what is the reporting range? And kind of compare some of those things, because it is going to impact your results at the end of the day. Okay, so let's look at my ethnicity markers on Ancestry DNA. When we take a look here, we can see a lot of the regions that we would expect to see based on my mother's ancestry. We can see the pioneer ancestor, the ancestry within the last 200 years in this region. Before 200 years, it actually comes back to here, but they don't have that mapped yet. we can see the Norwegian heritage, and this dark area right here where they've got highlighted for me is actually exactly where our records show up for the ancestors that immigrated from Norway to the United States. And then we see Britain and the greater, what they call the greater German French area, even though it doesn't include France. So this is kind of what we would expect to see, but we're not really sure, is this representing any of my paternal line at all? When we look at the 23andMe map, we see a little bit different picture, and I'm going to zoom it in so you can see those side by side. Here, where Spain and France and Italy, and some of these Eastern European countries and Russia are not highlighted on my ancestry report, they are in fact highlighted on my 23andMe report. So when we look at the percentages and breakdowns, and this is another one that's really, really hard to just side by side compare them, because again, they're going to create their own regions based on what the markers are kind of showing them is the region that they're discussing. So they don't always equal each other directly. But when we look at this, we can kind of see the breakdown here. On the ancestry side, we've got a 45% England, Wales, and Northwestern European, and a 40% Germanic Europe. On the 23andMe side, we see the Northwestern Europe kind of broken down into French and German, and then it's broken further into 3 regions. And I'm going to go ahead and switch screens real quick so that I can show you. Oops, come here. Okay, so that I can kind of show you how that breaks down. Oh, no, we don't want to do that. We want to go back. Okay, we want to go here. Okay, so when we go to Ancestry Composition, we can see the map I just kind of showed you there, and we can see the breakdown over on this side. When I click into that region where it shows me it's got a further breakdown, it gives me another map, and it kind of zooms into each area. So first we have the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands, it highlights sort of the more likely regions versus the less likely regions. And right here you can see Antwerpen. That is where we actually have the records tracing our family back. And our deepest records are right here in Antwerpen, but then we do have some records showing some lines or ancestors went out here to the Netherlands as well. So let's take a look at Belgium, and you can see the area that we know, Antwerpen, is the darkest shaded area. And Flanders, which it's listing here, is actually one of the ports, one of the main ports in Antwerp. So that all kind of lines up and matches up. Then we come down to Germany, and it highlights this region right here, which I don't really have any information about yet, but is now an area that I know to go and start looking for records and data and see what I can find and check for matches from that area that might be able to shed light on these things for me. If we go back again, we have another area here, the Greek Belkan region, and it breaks down and shows me several regions in Romania that could be potentially part of my paternal heritage, and that I don't am not shown on my ancestry DNA. So that gives me kind of some new areas that I wouldn't have known to research if I had done ancestry DNA alone, instead of also adding the 23andMe. So I think the biggest difference here, the biggest breakout we see in difference is this Southern European, the 7.3% Southern European that it's giving me on 23andMe that it doesn't report on my ancestry. Okay, so let's come back and go back to the presentation. hold on one second. Oh, bother. Okay, let's see. Why is it not sharing? Okay, hold on a second here. I'm getting myself confused. There we go. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so
you have your PowerPoint up?
is my PowerPoint up? Do you see it? Okay, hold on one second. Did you see my PowerPoint?
You did have it on there for a minute. You just
Oh,
had to
okay. I
start the
thought you were saying.
slideshow,
I thought
but
you were
it's
saying
not
I
on
didn't.
now.
It's
Okay.
not on now. So go back up to the top and do share screen again or new screen,
Okay.
and then select your PowerPoint. There you go.
Is it on?
Yes.
Yeah, you just have
You'll
to
need
start your PowerPoint.
Oh, I see it. Okay. Okay, we're just going to run through
you're
real
on the
quick.
wrong
Sorry
window.
about that.
It's showing up with your speaker view.
I'm so sorry, guys.
There, you're fine.
You got it?
Got
There
Okay.
you go.
Okay, let's just go from there. All right. So, let's get back to where we wanted to be. Okay, so which is best? At this point, I would hope that everybody feels like maybe they would want both. They would see the benefit of having the combination of the giant database that Ancestry offers us in combination with the regions, maybe especially if you know that you have heritage more in Southern or Eastern Europe or Russia, that you're going to want to maybe add this additional kit so that you have even a better picture. But the true power really comes into play when you combine the kits. Once you have your 23andMe done and you have your Ancestry DNA done, there are third-party companies like GEDmatch and MyHeritage that will allow you to upload the raw data from each of those companies to them so that you can combine the data and get a clearer picture and potentially even more matches. So I'm going to try something real risky here again and see if I can get my, here we go. See if I can get my screen back here. And okay, are we seeing the website now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is MyHeritage, and I wanted to show this off partially because of it demonstrates the power of bringing the two different sources together into one stronger source, but it's also one of those really cool tools that we seem to enjoy so much. So I am going to play this little intro that MyHeritage offers you when you upload your data, or when you take a MyHeritage DNA test. They'll play out this little intro for you that maps out your heritage, and I want you to pay particular attention to the music as it goes. So let's go ahead and hit that. Okay, so that's kind of a fun thing that it shows you that interesting music from each different region as it dances around and shows you where you kind of fit on the globe. I thought that was a neat way to present that. And but then you can take a look at this, and we can actually go to the full ethnicity view now, and you can see that again my South European is showing up here, and it's showing to be about 7% Iberian and about 0.9% Italian. And then we go to East Europe, and I've got 14.2% Eastern Europe showing up here, which I didn't have showing up before on the other test. And then what's really, really new is this 2.8% West Asia that is showing up. So in part because we took the data, the raw data of the two other companies, and we merged them together so that they could be combined and considered together, but also because MyHeritage is going to be probably the leading seller of DNA kits outside of Russia. There'll be companies that are bigger inside of Russia, but outside of Russia, it's going to be the leading company for data, and they're going to be bigger in that Eastern European region where I'm looking for some more data. So, so again, it helps to combine those things and to get the different resources from each company, and when you can merge them together, then you get your absolute best results. Okay, so let's go back and go back to my presentation screen. Is it back up? Okay, all right, so let's advance. Okay, so the quick breakout difference we kind of saw was that in the Ancestry DNA, I didn't show any Southern European, I didn't show any East European, and I didn't show any Asian. On my 23andMe kit, I got a 7.3% Southern European, still 0 East European, and 0 Asian. And then when I combine the two with MyHeritage, I got 7.9% Southern European, 14.2% Eastern European, and 2.8% West Asian. And so you can see that the differences can be sort of dramatic depending on what your ethnicity is. If you know, again, that you're very deep United States history and then European before that, then this probably isn't going to be as drastic a difference for you. Okay, so what did that do as far as the number of matches? Both myself and my son received another roughly 1,300 matches through our 23andMe DNA tests. Comparatively, when you compare 1384 to 24843, that doesn't seem like very many matches. Same thing here. 17,000 matches seems so much more significant to the 1386. But again, when we break that down and we look at specifically where those matches are coming from, this is a map, and you can see my Ancestry DNA matches all popping up here in the United States and one little one way up here. But when we look at the list of where my DNA matches are coming from on 23andMe, we see 13 in Poland, 9 in Italy, 7 in Serbia, 6 in the Ukraine. So total, I get an extra 48 crucial matches by having tested on 23andMe. When we look at my son, it gets even more dramatic because instead of just having matches in the United States alone, he now suddenly has 52 in Poland, 20 in Romania, 14 in the Ukraine, a total of 61 extra crucial matches from having taken the 23andMe test in addition to his Ancestry test. So what about those trees and toys? 23andMe has fun toys too. Some of the tools allow you to access and triangulate matches without requiring an established tree. They have aggregate download of DNA match data, comparison tool, advanced DNA comparison tool, haplogroups, and chromosome painting that all can give you clues about your clusters and your DNA matches without having to have built a tree first. But now they have also added a place for a tree too. So you can build a tree now in 23andMe, and we'll take a look at each of these things. So let's start. The aggregate data download. I've gone ahead and done screenshots on these because to take you around in the actual account could potentially violate privacy of DNA matches, and we don't want to do that. So I have a screenshot here that shows you the 23andMe toolbar up here, and if you go to the Ancestry tab and go down to DNA relatives, then it's going to give you your list of DNA matches like you would see on 23andMe. And so you can kind of see here, DNA relatives is what they call them here. And you have your list here, and it keeps going down and down and down. And then you have some ability over here to sort those matches by different categories as well. But if you scroll down to the very, very bottom of the first page of your list, and you're going to have like probably many pages, but scroll down to the bottom of the page, and it has a button here that says download aggregate data. And once you click that button, a pop-up box will appear, and it allows you to kind of format it to work with whichever software you're using, whether it's Excel or Libra or whatever. So you can set those preferences, or you can just go with the default and hit continue, and it will pop up a searchable spreadsheet of your DNA matches. So I want to pull up, I actually went ahead and downloaded mine, and I hid the first two columns. Are you seeing the spreadsheet now? Yeah, okay. So I went ahead and hid the first two columns. What you would usually have here at the beginning is your usernames of your DNA matches. So I went ahead and hid those for privacy. And then I did a data sort that allowed us to sort by columns C, D, and E. I'm sorry, that's not true. D, E, and F. So what we're trying to do here is we're actually sorting first by the chromosome number. You can see here in column C, and then next sorting by the chromosome start point and end point. So remember, you have on this column here, you would have DNA matches hidden. So each one of these is a different DNA match. And if I scroll through and I'm looking at my start points and my end points on each one of these chromosomes, you start to see ones pop out that are very, very similar, like they cover the same span of start to finish. And that lets you know that you and the DNA matches who would be represented over here most likely share a common ancestor. They're going to be a cluster for you to consider. And so then there's other data here too that you can use. It kind of gives you some information about whether they're male or female. If they filled in their birth years, you'll have that. If they the guesstimated range, all that sort of stuff, all of that's going to be here. So you can sort by all of these things and use them as tools. But the really powerful thing is this this chromosome mapping that kind of lets you see that you have ranges in common. And this is a big topic that I have just like covered that much of. If you want to understand more how to use this, I would highly recommend going out and getting a book. Elizabeth Schoen Mills has some excellent material out there that will walk you through how to do these clusters and everything. It's not something that's going to be covered in an hour. But just to give you an idea that you have this ability that without a tree or any kind of research, I know that I have stuff in common with these people when we have these super, super clear overlapping segments. And there's actually one of the other cool tools that, let me give you back to this screen. Okay. Okay, so one of the other things that 23andMe does for you is they kind of automate that process just a little bit for you. So you can select different DNA matches and you can compare them in this advanced comparison tool. So to find it, you're going to come back to the 23andMe tab. You're going to go to Family and Friends this time, and you're going to go down here to the Advanced DNA comparison tool, and it's going to pop up a screen that looks kind of like this, and it's going to give you a search box right here, and you're going to start typing the name of the DNA match that you're looking for or matches you want to compare. As you type, this area right here is going to pre-populate with people who are matching what you've typed so far, and they'll start to disappear as they don't match anymore. Once you find the person that you want to compare, you just click on them and it adds them to this list over here. And you can add up to 6 people at a time to compare. And then you're just going to click this little compare button down here. And it's going to pop up a screen like this. And you can see here on chromosome 1, in that same segment we were looking at on the spreadsheet, it has colored and highlighted for us so we can see the correlation. I'm purple, this segment is orange, yellow, and so we can see each person and we can see that that lines up real perfect. And so we can have a high level of confidence that these people are a cluster that come from a common DNA ancestor. So now I have to just look deeper at that. So what do I do next? Well, I start going into each one of these and looking at them side by side. Quick thing on the last one. A really neat thing that they did with that DNA comparison tool is you don't have to be part of the mix. You can take yourself out and pick 6 other people to compare without your numbers even in there. So that's kind of a neat flexibility that you can get in there and do that. But okay, so I open one of these DNA matches, and at the very top of the screen, what I'm going to see is whatever they have as their username. I've kind of slurred this one out. They will have the sex populated right there. If they gave it, they'll have a birth year here. It'll show you their activity level and their location. Right here, you have the ability to add them as a connection. And you also have the ability to click and send them a message and to talk to them. And one of the first things I like to ask in this situation is I like to identify our other common matches from that list. And I like to send it over and be like, hey, it looks like this little group of us have someone in common. Do you already know any of these people on this list? If they can look at it and say, oh my gosh, that's my cousin Sam and my Aunt Shirley, well, now we've kind of zeroed in on what line I'm connecting to them with. So that can help as a clue. The next thing we see, if we scroll down a little bit further, is we're going to see the genetic relationship. And this is, again, a guesstimate based on the amount of shared DNA, and it's going to kind of try and map it out so you get a visual of what that looks like. Next is going to do a little bit of DNA mapping here, again, where it shows our shared DNA percentage, the amount of centimorgans shared, and then again, it shows us where we're mapping. And on closer relatives, it'll be lit up all through here. And when we compare that closer relative sometimes with one of these more distant and they have an overlapping, it can help us know that, okay, this person, even though they've only got a little bit of a marker, their marker lands exactly where this other line's markers are falling. So we can see that they probably tie together with that line, and we can start to investigate that further and look for more evidence. The next thing we're going to see is family background. And of course, this is going to change a lot just based on contribution. This is your column here, and this is your DNA matches column here. So if they didn't fill out any ancestor birthplaces, you won't have that to go on. But if they did, you can compare your list with their list and see, oh wow, look, they have Rineyville, Kentucky. So that might be where we connect. We can start looking there. Same thing with family surnames. We can, if they added any family surnames, I can compare those surnames with the surnames I have to know if we have those in common. The next thing it's going to show us is our compared ancestry composition. And so you have your column here and you have their column here, and you can kind of go across and say, you know, if we're falling in the European range, it's probably not going to be immediately helpful. But if we had something a little bit more unique, like a Romanian line, and they're showing up also Romanian, again, that's a clue to say, okay, that might be where we connect, and it's a place to start looking. 23andMe also offers haplogroups and haplogroup comparison. So this is kind of cool. Your maternal haplogroup identifies you back going along your mitochondrial DNA, and it goes back from your mom to her mom to her mom to her mom to her mom back to your starter mom, basically. And then it groups you in, and we're going to take a closer look at this a little bit further in, so we'll come back to this. Your paternal haplogroup is the same thing, but on your dad's side, your dad's dads. But because women don't get the Y chromosome from their dad, women don't have a paternal haplogroup. So this might be confusing right now because I'm clearly a woman and you're looking at my paternal haplogroup. So how I went about getting that was to have my brother tested. My brother and I share both parents the same. And so once he tested on 23andMe, it plugged it in as my haplogroup as well, because it's he would have gotten it from our father. So those are some other clues that you can actually kind of use to see if you are in the same maternal or paternal haplogroup. That can kind of point you to a particular line, because it's not going to trace my mother's father for me. It's only going to trace my mom's mom. So it identifies a particular line for you. Another unique thing to 23andMe is the Neanderthal Ancestry. This is kind of a fun thing, and we're going to visit this in more detail in a minute, so we'll come back to that. Chromosome painting is one of the other cool things we've got here. Again, you're seeing my ethnicity percentages on the left here. On the right, you can see those actually mapped out on the chromosome, so you can see, you know, my Scandinavian, where did my Scandinavian specifically land? And if I wanted to, I could take and research and say, okay, so what specifically is chromosome 8 responsible for, and what does it do, and what traits does it affect, so that I can see, you know, what I might share with those other people that I'm sharing that chromosome with. Okay, and finally, I promised you a tree. And so this is what we have on 23andMe's tree. As you can see, it is nowhere near the tree that you're going to grow in Ancestry. It doesn't have places where you can research records. It doesn't have places for you to attach a bunch of pictures and records and information. It's just basically a map of your DNA connections, and it will go in and it will predict things based on the amount of DNA shared and the other DNA matches. So you can kind of see in here, this is my brother who DNA tested, and this is son 1 who DNA tested. And then we have some cousins that are popping up over here, and I didn't put those there. 23andMe put those there because it said these cousins are sharing DNA with with your mother, but not with this person over here who is identified as my uncle. And so it knows that these cousins belong on this side of the tree and not this side of the tree because of who it's matching up with. So, and it can get, whoa, it gets kind of advanced in going into that. So what I'm going to actually try and do right now, though, is I am going to go back to my web page. Are we seeing the web page now? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go to the web page and I'm going to go back to 23andMe. And I want to just quickly, because we are running out of time, I want to quickly go over some of the science behind 23andMe and also touch on some of those things we talked about earlier. So if I go to the Ancestry tab and I come down here to Ancestry Overview, it's going to give me various columns that I can click to. I want to go to the maternal haplogroup. So I'm going to click View My Report. And when I go in, you can see that it's going to break down for me what this haplogroup is. It's going to break down the different generations and give me some background about what those time periods were and how I'm connected to the groups. And it's going to show how they know the migration and all that kind of stuff. So it's really super interesting. But that's not even going into the deep science of it. If you are one of those people who is like wants more, you want to know the behind the scenes, you can click this little button that says scientific details and it pops, it's all over 23andMe. On most pages, you're going to have a little button here that says scientific details. And when you click it, it's going to go in and start breaking down the science for you. And usually it's going to involve charts and it's going to include your references and sources. And if there's data sets, it's going to include the data sets. So it really, really gets deep into the science for you. Another one was the Neanderthal. So when we come into Neanderthal, we see some fun little facts about our relation to the Neanderthals, and we see how some variants that affected for me. I am most likely a better sprinter than distance runner because of my connections, and I am likely to have more dandruff. So some of this stuff is kind of silly and kind of fun. But then you can, again, click the scientific details and it's going to get deeper and it's going to go into the markers and it's going to show the mapping and it's going to start breaking down all the science and references for you, which I think is really super neat. Another thing, when you come up here on the top tab, if you sign up for the 23andMe with health and traits, then you'll have all these different reports and traits and things like that available. If you click the research button on 23andMe, in Ancestry.com, research means you're going to find records. On 23andMe, research means you're going to answer a bunch of surveys and help them do research for future reports. So that's kind of different there. Okay, so let's see. Real quick, you have this as a handout, 23andMe and the FDA. It gives you kind of the history and a breakdown of 23andMe and what they've gone through to make sure that their tests meet FDA standards and how they keep adding more to it and making sure that those also meet FDA standards. And it'll take you all through that. I contacted Ancestry.com or Ancestry DNA because I was curious why they are now offering health reports, but I couldn't find anything at all about an FDA approval. So I contacted them and they explained to me that they do not need FDA approval because they have partnered with an outside source for their health reports, and I would assume it is the outside source who then has those FDA permissions. So that is my presentation, guys. Let Let me get back here and stop sharing my screen. Okay, I'm turning it back over.
If we have a couple of minutes, Kelly, there's a couple of questions that came up that I actually had the same question, so that's why I'm starting with them.
Yes, and I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone has, but I was making a mess on my screen, so I wanted to make all that go away.
Terry Reynolds wants to know, could you elaborate on the statement that you expect MyHeritage to be the largest seller of kits outside of Russia?
Okay, so the reason I say that is when I was researching this, I found evidence, or I found reports saying that in addition to the fact that MyHeritage was one selling in Russia, and some of these other DNA testing companies were not selling in Russia at all, but in addition to that, among the companies that were selling in Russia, it appears that MyHeritage was the only one who went through and translated their site into Russian, and therefore they became the popular choice, and more people were selecting them than the other options because it was translated for them and easy.
And it's got a huge European, South American,
yeah,
Asian.
huge presence. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one is, how and where do you combine two DNA kits yourself, and what third-party tools accept the combination?
Okay, so so if you're wanting to combine yours, what you're going to do is you're going to go into your DNA, and it's different on Ancestry from 23andMe, but in both places it's right there where your DNA settings are. So find your DNA settings and you'll see it. Let me see if it'll let me show me real quick. So what you're going to do is you're going to download the raw data, and I'm trying to see if it'll show, if I can remember real quick how to do it. But once you go in and you download the raw data from each source, first from 23andMe and then from Ancestry, it's going to make you, first of all, sign these permissions and make sure that you understand that once you download that raw data, they're not responsible if your raw data information gets out into the world, because now you've taken control of that. But you sign all your permissions, and then they email you a link when the data's ready. You download it and you save it on your computer, and then you're going to go for MyHeritage. You go into, oh, I'm not screen sharing anymore. Hold on. I'm trying to go where I can see it. All right, so on MyHeritage, there's a tab at the top that says DNA, and if you mouse over on that DNA tab and then go down to upload DNA data, it opens a screen and it allows you to just start your upload, and you can upload your data to MyHeritage for free. You do not have to have an account with them, but it's better to have an account because you get access to everything if you have an account. And if you do the free one, you only get certain permissions. Like you can see your ethnicity breakdown and you can see your DNA matches and everything, but I think you have to rely on them contacting you, and there's like a bunch of stuff you can't search. So, but you can upload it there so that you can combine those resources and get your ethnicity combined. And GEDmatch is about the same. When you go to GEDmatch, there'll be a place there, and all of these things are quick, easy Google. Say how to upload raw data, and it will give you a literal walkthrough, like 5 steps.
So then did you also upload your Ancestry to MyHeritage, and that's how you got it combined?
Yes,
they go,
exactly.
Oh, this is the same person.
Yes, exactly.
So you didn't do anything other than upload.
That's right. I took the raw data from 23andMe, I uploaded it, and I told MyHeritage, this is my 23andMe kit, and then I uploaded another kit, and I said, this is also my kit. This is my ancestry kit, and you can like label them so you can tell them apart, but you upload them, and then it takes a little while because they don't just take that raw data and just post it the way it is. They take that raw data up and then they combine it into their algorithm with their resources. And so it can take a couple of days to a week, and you get an email telling you it's ready, and then you go back and you'll see your combined. So so it's not like an instant thing. If you're wanting this, you want to do it like now and then have time to wait to get your email. And any other questions?
Somebody else, Barbara asked, why not just sort by the centimorgans? This is when you had your...
Oh, yeah. No, there is, like I said, there is so much more you can do with those spreadsheets that that I didn't even touch on. Like I was just giving a quick peek to those who have never seen it before, but there is, hold on. Okay, there is like books and like classes and like so much that you can do, that you want to study that topic deeper if that's something you're into. But because we have a whole range of people, I didn't want to like eat up a bunch of time trying to cover all of that. So yeah, you can sort by centimorgans, you can sort by the surname column, and see if you get common surnames popping up. You can just like any other spreadsheet, you can manipulate that thing and make it talk for you.
We have one more question.
Oh, the author of the book I just showed is Debbie Parker Wayne, but she actually worked in combination with like some really, really big names in the industry, and people who have been doing this for a while and who like know their stuff backwards and forward. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It's called, there we go, Advanced Genetic Genealogy. And you can get this on Amazon. And it's like a whole course book, and you'll be like a semi-expert by the time you're done with it if you study it right. So yeah, go get it.
Justice, I want to test my brother. Is it similar to Ancestry in that he needs his own account and I am the manager? I'm assuming she means for either.
Yeah, no. Actually, I am manager of my account, my brother's account, and my son's account. They didn't make me create separate accounts the way Ancestry did. They let me just upload as many different, so you can put your whole family in and manage that for yourself. And no, you can't buy the book with tabs. Those are my tabs that I stuck in there.
We're about out of time here. Any one last question?
Anyone?
I think we got it.
Have you done a comparison between DNA testing directly with MyHeritage and combination with results from Ancestry and 23andMe?
I have not. To be real super transparent with you, I only just discovered MyHeritage kind of while preparing for this. I had been really heavy into just the Ancestry and the 23andMe and had sort of been ignoring MyHeritage a little bit, and I feel shame.
The color of shame.
Thank you, Justice.